All right, welcome back to the channel, everybody. I figured I'd do a little talking video about sort of how I kind of started in the food industry and kind of how I got here. And I have some free time as I'm driving doing my wholesale deliveries for Brooklyn Pasta Lab, and figured I'd share this with you guys. So yeah, this is the first one. Might be longer than just one video, but we'll see. So how did I get into cooking? So basically, I guess I was born in Brooklyn and grew up out on Long Island, and I went to elementary school, middle school, high school in Long Island. And during high school, you know, when it's time to start figuring out like what to do after high school, college, all that stuff, my school offered this program where basically it was a vocational school that you would go to. And a vocational school is basically another school that you would go to that is separate from your high school, and it's usually divided by the county. So for mine, it was just the county that I was from, that I went to. And you had a bunch of different schools come together, and you go to this vocational school. And in the vocational school, they have different options. You know, you can go for culinary arts, you can go for cosmetology, plumbing, school to become a pilot. It's a bunch of different trades, basically. And I chose culinary arts. So the way it worked was the last 2 years of high school, junior year and senior year, I went to this vocational school for half the day. So half the day I would go to this school, and then they would bring me back to my high school, and I would just do the basic classes like math, science, English, and then I would have my culinary school. And it was pretty good. Like, actually, it was really good. It was very good. The chef there was amazing, and he taught us so much, and we did a bunch of like food science stuff, so we learned a bunch how like things work in cooking, and we made a bunch of classic recipes. You know, it was just basically, honestly, it was better than going to culinary school, which I did later on after high school. And I just learned so much there. And so I started that junior year, and then I wanted to get, you know, like a working experience in a restaurant. So I asked my chef for if he knew any places, you know, in the area. And there was this Italian restaurant. It wasn't very good, to be honest, but it was an Italian restaurant. And I asked the owner, can I sort of do like an internship, like an unpaid thing? And he didn't even know what an internship was. And I kind of had to explain it to him, like, you don't need to pay me. I'm just going to come and, you know, learn how you do things in the kitchen and stuff like that. So I did that a couple of days per week after school. I would go there, my mom would drop me off, and then, because I wasn't driving still, I was like 14, and my mom would drop me off, work there the whole night service, probably till like 10 or so, because I had to go to school the next day. And I did that for a little bit, honestly, only a couple of weeks, because I remember the first day my mom dropped me off, I worked, and then she picked me up, and she told me that my dad was talking to one of his friends, and he knew this owner of a restaurant in Brooklyn at the time. It was called Dressler. They're closed now, but it was called Dressler, and he knew the owner, and my dad's good friend wanted us to all, you know, go there, and he wanted to introduce me to him. So literally like the next week or so, on the weekends, I would actually work with my dad in his hair salon and, you know, sweep the floors, work the cash register, things like that. and I would do that on the weekends, and during the week I would do this restaurant thing and go to school. So one weekend I worked with my dad, and then we went to this restaurant to eat, and we got like this tasting menu, sat at the bar. It was me, my dad, and his friend, and he sort of introduced me to the chef in the middle of the meal, and he was like, listen, he's getting into cooking, all that. He wants to learn, and he's looking for like an internship one or 2 days a week. And he was like, yeah, here's my number, call me whenever. So I called him, and then set up, I think it was like the following week, set up for me to go in on a Saturday when my dad would go into work, into Brooklyn. He would drop me off there, and then he would work, and then when he was done working, he would come pick me up, and then we would go back home in Long Island. And yeah, I ended up staying there for like 2 years. I would go on the weekends, do prep, really simple things like clean lettuce, make stock, a bunch of little things, break down chickens, basic stuff that taught me a lot. Actually, I didn't really know much, and I learned a ton there. Learned a ton of good habits of working in a kitchen, and it was a really, really great place for me to start. And it was actually one of the first restaurants in Brooklyn to get a Michelin star. And I think it was like 2008, 2009. It got the first star, and I was there in like 2010. And yeah, it was a really big deal because that was like one of the first restaurants that got a Michelin star. And it was an amazing restaurant, really romantic, dark, really, really good service. The food was just like sort of French-ish with some other American twists. But it was just like really good, solid food, done really well, and nothing crazy. Everything was still cooked like traditionally, like on a grill or braising, sautéing fish in a pan. A lot of like butter basting and things like that. It wasn't any like sous vide or vacuum sealed stuff. Low temperature cooking, not like that. But yeah, it was a really good place to start out, and I ended up staying there. It was junior year, worked there on the weekends, and then that summer I would work there more, and then went back to school for my senior year of high school, worked there on the weekends as well, and then I eventually started to do like the brunch shift and kind of learned how to work on the line a little bit. And then after high school, I actually didn't go to college or culinary school right after. I just graduated, and then that summer literally just started working there like full time. And it was amazing. Like I was literally like 18 years old and working at this Michelin star restaurant on the line and learning so much, and it was busy. It was just like a really, really good place for me to start out. And I was there for, I think it was like 2 years total, but sort of towards the end of the time there, the chef, he left, and they brought in this new chef, and I was like, at the time where I was sort of thinking like, hey, I want to check out some other restaurants. And I was still young then, so I was willing to kind of do whatever. And so I had plenty of time to, to learn from other kitchens. So I ended up leaving there and actually starting culinary school at the French Culinary Institute in New York. It was a part-time sort of thing, so I would go in three nights a week, and then I would also work. So after I left Dressler, I went to this restaurant called Battersby in Brooklyn, which was another amazing restaurant. It was a really small restaurant. It was literally just the two chefs, and one cook basically. And when I started there, they just hired a pastry chef. So they were busy, and they were sort of kind of expanding their operation. I guess putting less workload on them, and they hired a pastry chef. So they didn't actually have any positions open like on the line, because it's literally just 3 stations where the chef would expedite and work like a garde manger station, and then the other chef would work like an entremet station, like a veg, basically all the sides and garnishes for all the hot dishes and pastas as well. And then there was a meat roast, so they would cook all the proteins, all the fish, all the meat, all the sauces and things like that. So there was basically they were fully staffed for that. And then they had the pastry chef downstairs that took care of the pastries, all the desserts. And I was like, listen, I'm going to school at nights, but I can help do like prep. And they didn't really have anybody doing that at the time. So I was like, I can do prep, I can help the pastry chef, whatever. So like I was really just doing pastry prep for a couple of months in the beginning while I was going to school still. And I would basically go in 12 o'clock for a couple of hours, do some prep with the pastry chef, and then around like 4 or so I would leave because I had to be at school. I think it was around 5, and it was like 5 to 9 p.m. or to 10, the class. And yeah, I did that for a couple of months, and then they gave me some other like tasks that they needed to be done. For example, like they needed pastas to be rolled out and cut and things like that. And that was like the first restaurant where I really got into making pasta, because before that I didn't really do much pasta. At Dressler we did some ravioli, but we did it was all like bought. We bought the pasta and then filled the pasta ourselves, but it was a little different. It was still really good, but yeah. So then basically I would do some savory prep as well, like make pastas, do bread stuff. What else would I do? Just prep a bunch of vegetables, break down chickens, things like that, get stock like strained and stuff like that. And then eventually when the pastry chef needed like days off, I would work the pastry station at night on the days that I wasn't going to school. So I would work the pastry station, and it was an amazing experience because I never did pastry before. Not a lot of savory cooks tend to do pastry or both, but I think it's an amazing skill to have, especially as you're growing up in the kitchen and learning different skills, and not just like stick to savory. I think it's really good to just check out everything, honestly. Baking, pastry, savory, butchery, everything. So I would do that when he was off, work his station, and then eventually graduated from culinary school, and I needed to work full time, and I just basically stayed there for another 1.5 years or so. And when I graduated, of course, like I changed stations because one of the cooks was leaving, and I got the opportunity to work the meat roast, which was really, really difficult. It was really, really hard. I learned a ton, but it was really, really hard. And for my first I worked the line at Dressler, and I worked all the stations there besides the grill. So I knew how to cook a lot of meat, fish, quick pickups, scallops, things like that. So yeah, going to this restaurant where like now I'm just focusing on the proteins, I'm making all these sauces, and the sauces were made in such a specific way as well. Traditionally, you wouldn't like have a lot of fat in the sauce, like butter, but but we actually did. We had a lot of fat in the sauces and gave really nice flavor, and it was emulsified with cornstarch. So it was a really interesting way to make these sauces, these meat sauces for the meat dishes. And yeah, basically I worked meat roast, learned so much, learned how to cook so many different types of proteins. And it was, by the way, it was also like a super small kitchen. You can look online, Battersby, like Google it or whatever, but it was really small kitchen. It was a 6-burner stove, that's it. And we had an oven downstairs, and you really had to be smart about, your cooking times on certain things, what's in the pan now, what's going in next, things like that. And then the guy next to you is also cooking pastas, and yeah, it was crazy sometimes. It was a small restaurant, but we did tasting menus, like 5 or 7 courses, and of course there were some more little things added onto those. But we made a lot of food out of that small kitchen, and I eventually moved to the next station, which was like the pasta and entremet, and yeah, it was such a really, really great learning experience. Learned so much, different vegetable preparations, pastas. Yeah, that's the restaurant where I first started really, really getting into pasta, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go there, because my wife and I, at the time we were just dating, but she lived nearby and I lived nearby also, but we would go there whenever we could get in, because there was a huge line out the door all the time, and we would just love everything. The bread was made there, and all the pastas, the filled pastas, it was just amazing. And the pasta stuff I was always really into it, because I always thought it was so cool how as a chef you can make things that people would normally just buy in the grocery store. You can make it at home. I mean, in your kitchen. Like, for example, bread. Like, nowadays a lot of people do make bread at home, but a lot of people just don't make bread at home. They're just buying this store-bought stuff, not even from a good bakery, just store-bought with a ton of stuff in it. And yeah, it was just so cool to me to, like, hey, I can make this bread. Oh, I can make this pasta. And I always thought that was really cool. So so I worked the entremet station, then we got another cook, and then I moved to actually expediting, which was the station that the chef would usually work, because they were opening up another restaurant. And it really gave me the confidence and a really good opportunity to sort of lead the kitchen during a service. But of course I was still like doing a bunch of dishes during service. It wasn't just like expediting and telling everybody what to do. We were kind of coordinating and building all of the tasting menus, making all of the garde manger dishes, all the cold dishes, all the amuse, things like that. And coordinating with the dining room, seeing where we're at with tables and things, making sure that the meats are nicely roasted and all the pastas are doing well, and things like that. So it really gave me the opportunity to start to learn how to manage the kitchen, and it was just an amazing opportunity. And then I think that was literally the best restaurant I've worked in, probably food-wise and learning-wise. Like, I learned so much there and got basically destroyed a lot. It was a really hard restaurant to work in, but once you got the system down, the chefs really let you kind of own the station, and like you were in charge of also ordering all of your own things. Like, that would never happen at other restaurants. If you're just a cook, like, you wouldn't even have to do anything. You just walk in and everything is there. But here, like, if you were running low on chickens or whatever, like, you would plan out your whole week, and it really gave me the knowledge that I needed for, starting to think about the future. Like, oh, we're gonna need this on this day and this then, and what am I gonna do this day, and then we need to make the sauce the next day, and all those type of things. Even ordering vegetables, like, you have to meet minimums for vendors and things like that. And as a cook, you don't really do that. You don't do any of those. You don't learn any of those skills. So I learned so much there, and I think that place really, like, I always look back and I'm like, oh, that was like the best place I worked at. I learned so much, and the food was amazing. And so, I was there for, I think it was almost 2 years, and I did a ton. I worked at all the stations, and going back to Dressler, they actually ended up closing, unfortunately. And the chef that I worked with before at Dressler, he was opening up a restaurant in the exact same space as Dressler. So it was just nice for him because he got the lease and everything. But yeah, he reached out to me and he's like, hey, do you want to help me open up the restaurant? So it was a hard decision to make because I really liked working at Battersby a lot, and I was learning so much, and it was really, really nice. But I was there for 2 years and worked all the stations, and I just wanted to get the experience of opening a restaurant. It's like this opportunity was given to me, so let me just take advantage of it. Opening a restaurant is not something that everybody gets to do, and I think everybody should experience it. That's working in kitchens. It's crazy how, like, you could start off with a team and literally, like, 1 week in after opening the restaurant, you'll have nobody and have to restart, and like, it's just like a crazy experience. But that being said, I ended up, taking the job there, and I was like the opening fish cook, so I would work the fish station, and then I also ended up working, I worked all the stations there also. I would do ordering because we didn't have like a proper sous chef, but I personally felt like I took on that responsibility, just being accountable and things like that. Like, I learned a ton of these skills at Battersby, like even with ordering. I would put in the order when the chef wasn't there and things like that. And basically, I was there for, I think, a year or so, or maybe a little less. I don't remember exactly, but I was there for an okay amount of time, and I was like, I'm sort of used to this food. It's similar to the one at Dressler, which was amazing also. And oh, by the way, that restaurant was called Meadow Sweet. They're still open in Williamsburg. And yeah, I opened Meadow Sweet, and we also actually got a Michelin star too, first year. And then I wanted to basically, learn more fine dining cooking. I wanted to work in the city in Manhattan. I wanted to just get that experience, and I wanted to work in a restaurant that had like really crazy standards, because a couple of my friends were working in those type of restaurants, and I wanted to just really, step it up a little bit. So I trailed a bit at a couple different restaurants, Gramercy Tavern, where else? I only trailed at like Gramercy, and then Bettany, and Let Masson Park. But I ended up actually going to Bettany, and I left Meadow Sweet and then ended up working at Bettany, which was a restaurant in like Midtown Manhattan, and it was freaking crazy. Like it was crazy. Um, yeah, I trailed there, and like when you trail, it's super intense. They make you cook a dish, and it's like if you haven't been in those type of restaurants, you're just like so shocked. Like, damn. Like middle of service, the chef's like screaming at everyone, like literally screaming, like it was nuts. And I was never worked in a kitchen like that. Like I was working in kitchens that were like calm and busy, but like no screaming and you know, just like simple. But this place was crazy. So in the middle of service on my trail, they're like, here, cook a dish. And he gave skate, I think it was. Yeah, he really liked skate. So, or was it scallops? I think it was scallops, actually. And I was so used to cooking scallops because at Dressler, even Battersby, and also Meadows, we had a lot of scallop dishes, and I got really, 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 really good at cooking them. And yeah, I forgot exactly the dish I made, but I think it was something with like zucchini, and because I think it was in the summertime. Yeah. Anyways, so they ate it, got the job. Then I started at Bettany in the wintertime, like February or something like that. And then when I was there, I started at Garde Manger, and it was crazy. It was so intense. Like there were so many people on the station. There was such little space. Everything had to be like perfect, like perfect. Like all your knife cuts, even like the timing of the dishes going out. Like it was crazy. We had the Garde Manger station downstairs, and the rest of the line was upstairs. And we had like walkie-talkies for upstairs and downstairs, and we would communicate that way. And there was a leader of the Garde Manger station, and he would basically, you know, be in charge of all of us. But he wasn't a sous chef or anything, but he was just like the head of Garde Manger. And I remember there were nights where I was not ready at all, and he would get so much like crap from the chef from it for it, because it was ultimately his fault, because he's like in charge of the Garde Manger station, all that. But that was just a crazy restaurant. And then a couple weeks into just working there, like I personally felt like I was doing a terrible job on Garde Manger, and I guess it just wasn't my strong suit. Like I felt better cooking, you know, because we had all these small hors d'oeuvres that I never had experience working with, like all these small things. That was my first restaurant where I had tweezers, like things like that. It was a real like level up in the cooking game. And yeah, I don't know what happened, but I guess somebody left, and yeah, I think people were leaving, and they needed some more people upstairs in the main kitchen, like in the hotline. So I actually got moved to the morning shift, which, yeah, the morning Garde Manger shift. I was terrible at that as well. And yeah, I was like, I mean, I was fine, but not the best. And basically in the morning, you get in like 6 a.m. You can't go in earlier. The baker's there earlier than you, and he's a sous chef. And if he saw you, he would literally yell at you and tell you to leave. And because you're not allowed to be there earlier. So 6 a.m., everyone runs in the kitchen, starts prepping, and we have tasting, which is basically like all of your mise en place, everything you put up for the chef to taste. And you know, if something was messed up, you would have to redo it. And that was at 11 o'clock, and 12 o'clock is service, and like you're screwed if something is messed up. And service starts at 12, and then it's like a 2-hour lunch service, I think it was. And you know, the service wasn't like crazy, but it was in Midtown, and we would get a lot of people on like their work lunches and things like that. and we would have to just push out the food so fast. So it was really difficult during service. But we didn't do as many covers, but it was still really, really difficult. And I think I did well during service. It's just the prep I wasn't the best at, because you would also have to do so much for the PM team, and I was not getting things done. And randomly, one of the sous chefs, he comes up to me and he's like, "All right, you're gonna go to the fish station next week." And I was like, "What?" But I was super excited. Like, I was only literally like a couple weeks into the PM Garde Manger, and then a couple weeks into AM Garde Manger, and then started working AM fish roast, and I learned so much there, breaking down so much different fish, making different fish sauces, and this was way different technique of making sauces than we did at Battersby. Not a lot of fat in the sauces at all, and yeah, it was just like really, really cool to work like the hotline in a super tight kitchen. Tight meaning like really strict kitchen, and they would do the tastings every day. They were on top of everything. And once I moved there, then I started like really taking cooking a lot more serious. I was like, the hours were a lot, and I was like super into it. I was killing myself like crazy. And luckily my wife, or she was my girlfriend at the time, she was fine with it. But we would see each other like twice a week. But yeah, it was crazy. I was doing so much stuff. They're doing like all the sauces, breaking down all the fish, getting ready for service. Yeah, it was crazy. And you would still do a ton of stuff for the PM team. And yeah, it was just nuts. Then a couple months into that, I think I went to Entremet, which was like all the garnishes and things, like all the vegetables, things like that. And then another cook worked the fish station. And then I actually went back to the fish station because we changed the system in the kitchen. So the chef wanted to have CDPs, like chef de partie. So if you were chef de partie, you're like below a sous chef, but you're above a cook, and you're basically in charge of a cook. You're in charge of one of the cooks. So for example, I got moved to PM, and I was the chef de partie of the fish station, and I was in charge of this cook that would work the fish station, and I had to know everything about all the fish, all the prices, I had to know how many portions we had of everything in-house, and I was in charge of the ordering of the fish. Like, you really just, it's like your restaurant is the fish station, and that's all you think about. So I kind of became obsessive over that, and I think I did really, really well. But at that point, when we got switched to CDPs, it was crazy because they made us work so many more hours, paid us less, and it was just crazy. And so I actually I did a couple like private dinners on the weekends. My wife helped me. She was amazing at helping with that. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do it without her. And yeah, I did these private dinners every once in a while, so I needed the weekends off. So I told them, listen, I need the weekends off, but I work during the week there in the nighttime or the night shift. Well, basically, you literally come in at 9 a.m. and you leave at 2 a.m. So it was crazy. I did that. I only did that part for a couple of months, and I was like, okay, I need to go. So, and like my relationship with my wife, well, she was my girlfriend at the time. We were getting, more serious and stuff. I mean, we were always very serious, but we were like 5 years into our relationship, something like that. And we're almost in the city now, going to tunnel. So yeah. So then, where was I? So yeah, I left Bethany. It was all good. They were kind of mad that I didn't stay a year. I was there for like 8 months, but whatever. Yeah, so then after that, I trailed out a couple places. I think like Blanca in Brooklyn. Where else? The Nomad, per se, which I wouldn't work there because I didn't want to go to another crazy kitchen. But the Nomad, I think I went to, the Nomad. And I ended up taking the Nomad, trailed there. They did the same thing. They like make you cook a dish. But this time I knew like they would let me, like they would tell me to cook a dish. You like have 1 hour to cook a dish, and it was great. I think I made a fish. I think it was fish. Yeah, I think it was like a cod, and I made this little stuffed cabbage thing. It was also the summertime, so I did another zucchini. It was like zucchini, cabbage, onions, like cooked that down really nicely, and then wrapped in this cabbage leaf that was blanched, and then seared that and made a little sauce with the same stuff that's stuffed in the cabbage. So, and then roasted the fish, and it was really good. I think it was really simple, whatever. And got the job there, and I think we will stop there actually because I have to drop off this delivery. Yeah, we're almost here. So, all right, I'll stop at the Nomad and we'll continue this in another video. Let me know if you guys want me to go in depth more about any restaurants I worked at, any of the chefs or what kind of food it was, maybe things that I learned there that sort of stood out. Yeah, let me know, and I hope you like this style of content. And the next video I'll go more in depth about the Nomad and sort of what I did after that. So yeah, thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next Driving with Michael. Thanks.